You have been lied to, and the lie is as gentle as a lullaby. Awakening, they say, is a sunrise, warm, obvious, welcomed by songbirds. In truth, it is an eclipse, sudden and disorienting, a darkness that asks whether you are willing to see without the crutch of daylight. Do not mistake this darkness for exile. It is not punishment. It is invitation. Every soul eventually stands in a crowded room, coffee in hand, polite smile fixed, listening to words that float like empty balloons, watching faces shift through socially sanctioned expressions. In that moment, something inside you whispers, "I am more than this choreography." That whisper is the threshold, the hairline crack in the familiar wall. Campbell called it the call to adventure, but tonight it feels less like a bugle and more like a hush that silences the clatter. You glance across the buffet table, and in a flicker of eye contact you sense another mask slipping, and for one breath, both of you are naked to the strangeness of being alive. The old life, the predictable gears of alarm clocks, calendars, and carefully curated opinions, rattles on, yet the noise no longer lulls you. A door opens that no one else seems to notice, and your first step is not forward, but inward. You realize with a shiver that the ordinary world Campbell spoke of is a beautifully engineered machine, and you have been pressing its levers in your sleep. The hero's journey does not begin with marching orders or thunderous prophecy. It begins with that fragile discontent, the soft revolt that says, "I refuse to be automatic." You feel the weight of solitude rising, heavier than any backpack, yet strangely, it lightens your stride. To step away from the crowd is not a gesture of rejection. It is a pilgrim's bow to something older than acceptance, authenticity. The mythic transition arrives like twilight over water, subtle, relentless, irreversible. In the dim reflection, you see yourself split, one self built of roles and approvals, another burning like a small clandestine star. The eclipse deepens. The heartbeat of destiny, quiet, steady, begins its percussion. You are no longer just living, you are listening. Behind you, the party music swells, but it sounds like a distant parade you never agreed to join. Ahead waits a wilderness where words thin and meaning grows thick. You remember Campbell's promise, the hero departs alone, yet every archetype that ever lived stands ready to guide, challenge, and transform. As you leave the neon glow of shared assumptions, doubts gather like moths. Who are you without the applause? What is left when the joke lands flat and the room forgets your name? These questions sting precisely because they liberate. The masks were always too tight. The silence between sentences was always broadcasting more truth than the sentences themselves. You tighten your cloak of solitude, not to hide, but to feel the wind of your own becoming. Nightbirds call your name. The eclipse is complete. Somewhere inside the darkness, a single lantern ignites, powered by curiosity, calibrated by breath. The journey has begun. The forest of silence does not echo with applause. It hums with distant water and the brittle crack of twigs underfoot. Here your mentors are not hooded sages, but the rhythm of your pulse and the cold honesty of starlight. Campbell knew this terrain. The crossing of the first threshold is never paved. Each step removes the soil of certainty from your boots. Solitude is not a punishment. It is a right, the narrow bridge between the chatter of the marketplace and the whisper of the soul. You walk until conversation becomes memory, and memory becomes mist. Then you hear it, the call's second cadence, the one that trembles beneath language. Come die to what you were. Initiation, he taught, begins when the hero consents to be unmade. In the hush, you discover that silence is not empty. It is pregnant with every thought you once drowned in busyness. They rise now, old griefs wearing new faces, forgotten joys ripe as late peaches, fears that masqueraded as ambition. At first you flinch, then you watch. The spectacle is yours alone, and in witnessing without judgment, you become both stage and spectator. The myth said the threshold guardian might appear as dragon or sphinx. Yours appears as restlessness, the itch to check messages, to scroll the glowing oracles that promise validation at the swipe of a thumb. Resist and the dragon shrinks to lizard. Obey and it devours hours. You learn to let the screen dim, to sit until the digital magicians tire of casting spells. In that undistracted dawn, the inner wilderness opens like a flower no lens can capture. The loneliness you feared becomes a wide river you float upon. You notice its currents, memories of playground laughter, heartbreak's salt, the deep basso thrum of ancestral worries. You do not dam the river, you surrender to it, knowing that water carves canyons precisely because it yields. Gradually the banks rise, the stars wheel overhead, and the water slows into reflective pools. You glimpse your face, unadorned by rolls, and feel the echo of every pilgrim who has ever wandered into myth. Suddenly you are less alone. You belong to the fellowship of seekers whose names history rarely records, but whose footsteps lace every sacred trail. So if these words have found you in your midnight scrolling, pause with me. Close the tab of noise and open the window of night air. Step into our circle of travelers, where comments are campfire sparks, and each subscription is a fresh log on flames that warm without burning. Tell us what mask cracked first, what silence thundered the loudest, not to boost metrics, but to map the constellations of becoming across the shared sky. No algorithm can track the transformation that waits in your answer. Join us not as audience, but as ally. Trials rarely trumpet their arrival. They seep from shadows and wear the costumes of everyday annoyances. The hero discovers that the real gauntlet is not the dragon's roar, but the soft seduction to return to sleep. One morning, you wake drenched in doubt, the wilderness suddenly fugitive, the old machinery beckoning with its easy gears. This is the road of trials. Calendars disguised as cages, polite dinners where your newfound silence is mistaken for gloom, casual catch-ups that feel like re-enlistment speeches for the army of conformity. The shadow you meet may look like an old friend who knows exactly which joke once earned you laughter. It may look like a parent's lingering gaze, relieved to see you back to normal, but the deeper confrontation is internal. It is the moment you realize that part of you still aches to be applauded, still dreads the chill of misunderstanding. Campbell's dragon now breathes from your own lungs, yet the myth assures that every ordeal hides a boon. When loneliness reaches its crescendo, you encounter the unexpected grace of authentic connection. It happens suddenly, perhaps in a hushed library aisle or in the rain-dark parking lot outside a grocery store, when someone's eyes meet yours without agenda. In that lightning flash of recognition, you see twin wanderers reflected. Words stumble, but presence speaks. You realize that companionship forged in truth is rarer and more nourishing than any feast of polite performances. The trials continue. You face illusions that promise shortcuts, the seminar that sells enlightenment by the hour, the glittering guru who claims to know your destiny better than your heartbeat does. You learn discernment, the sword that cuts appearance from essence. Each swing is fueled by honesty, admitting when you falter, laughing when solemnity becomes its own mask, weeping without apology when old wounds reopen like spring rivers. No audience grades this vulnerability. It is its own gold. If these sentences ring somewhere inside your ribcage, linger with them. Let their echo coax your own stories to the surface. Then return to our circle. Bring your wounds and wonders. Leave a fragment of your path in the comments. One fragment is enough to light another traveler's lantern. Subscribe not to content but to community, to the shared vow that no seeker walks invisible. I will read your words as though they were carved runes, and together we will track the mythic trail that winds through the suburbs of the soul. There comes a dawn when the forest thins, and the ordinary world shimmers into view. You carry no trophies, yet everything you touch feels lighter. Campbell called this return with the elixir, but the elixir is not a potion, it is perspective. You step onto the sidewalk where neighbors water lawns, where emails accumulate like autumn leaves, and you realize nothing changed, and everything changed. The machinery keeps turning, but its gears no longer grip your bones. You can move within its rhythm without being defined by it. That is the quiet revolution. Solitude, once a vast desert, becomes an inner chapel you enter even in a crowd. It hums with a peace that does not demand silence, but flourishes in it. When conversation drifts into familiar shallows, you neither drown nor desert. You listen, and in listening you offer a depth that invites others to sink roots. Sometimes they refuse, sometimes they follow. You do not control the outcome. Freedom is the gift you both carry and grant. The lonely hero is now companion to invisibly many, bound not by roles, but by resonance. Authenticity reveals itself in small gestures, A polite no where you once offered a self-betraying yes, a steady gaze where you once sought approval, a half smile that admits, "I don't know," and means it as an open door. You discover that living mythically is less about slaying beasts than recognizing the beast and the hero as dance partners within. Integration, Campbell whispered, is mastery of two worlds, and mastery begins with mercy. You forgive the masks because you remember their weight. You forgive yourself because the journey never promised perfection, only transformation. The road ahead remains uncharted, but fear has ceded the driver's seat to curiosity. You feel the eclipse recede, yet the stars remain visible even at noon. The journey circles inward, outward, onward, a spiral that widens each time you dare to return bearing truth instead of trophies. You look at the city skyline, mirrors of glass, bones of steel, and see not a prison but a labyrinth whose center you now carry in your pocket. Every street is a string guiding you home. The myth lives wherever you are awake enough to name it. Pause here. Breathe. Feel the pulse behind your sternum, the same pulse that hammered in the chest of Gilgamesh, of Siddhartha, of that nameless ancestor who first wondered what lay beyond the hill. It is the drum that scores every hero's journey, including yours. Walk on, and if the shadows lengthen, remember the lantern born in eclipse. Its flame is fed by stories shared. Our circle waits beneath the next full moon. Come back and tell us what the night taught you.